hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session. This is episode 1, AI implementation across multiple clients and industries. First, I'd like to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Mike Bose. I'm the Vice President of Apexon AI, the AI organization at Apexon. With years of experience in the field, I've had the privilege of guiding numerous clients across various industries in their AI adoption journey. Today, we'll deep dive into the complexities and successes of implementing AI solutions. And with that, I have one of my colleagues and friends on the podcast as well, Brian Clark. Brian, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So I recently joined Apexon. It's a great organization. It's a pleasure to be here. And my AI 10 years ago, maybe more than that, but I was really intrigued when I saw the episode on Jeopardy where they had the IBM Watson demonstration. And I did some research into how did they actually pull this off. And, I said, wow, this is something that I really wanted to get involved with. And that was kind of what spurred my interest in AI and started my journey here. Recently, I started a master's degree program in quantum computing and looking how to leverage quantum machine learning, large language models, and delivering better data quality, but also trying to solve the problem of computational complexity. And I applied these passions and skills to helping customers on a daily basis at Apexon.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great, Brian. And, even as you're just talking about your introduction and some of your journey, it's made me think of how there's so many facets of work that go into AI. And I mean, talk about, computational complexity. My journey, from statistician and mathematics, and being more on the algorithm development side. But then, as you know, even now with a lot of the companies out there, AI is just one piece of the puzzle. There's so many existing systems that need to be integrated, et cetera. So yeah, very, very interesting how all of these pieces come together to create these AI products and experiences that are really revolutionizing the world we live in. So with that, I think we've got a couple of different topics today that we were gonna talk about, and I'm sure some of these topics will take us down a few different paths of interest, hopefully, to our listeners. So let's start with first. I think a good place to start would be just an overview of AI capabilities and limitations. Everybody likes to talk about the capabilities, and it can do that, it can do this, and it can do a lot of amazing things, but there's also limitations. So from your perspective, Brian, what are the current capabilities of AI, and where do you see some limitations? I think it's a good place for us to start.
Well, we can take a step back here and, focus in on one specialized portion of AI, which is deep learning, and neural networks in particular. And there's this universal axiom that says that anything that is calculable mathematically is predictable with a neural network, at least in theory. So, my perspective on this is a little bit different than anybody else, but I think that, there is essentially no limit to artificial intelligence and its capabilities so long as it's mathematically capable of being calculated. So in terms of the current capabilities, what we see in the marketplace now in terms of business organizations is, I think, the most successful implementation of artificial intelligence, we're talking about, cognitive type of intelligence, it's going to be probably in the call center. So we see lots of IVR solutions, lots of contact center solutions where we're doing things like converting speech into text or text into speech, doing neural voice work, and really streamlining the customer experience and reducing the amount of calls that call centers have to process manually. And this has tremendous benefits for customers as well because they can do self-service. You don't have to wait on the phone in long queues. And I think that the call center is definitely one of the big places where we're seeing the most benefit from AI at the moment. And in terms of limitations, there's many. So um, artificial intelligence in general is a data hungry practice that requires pipelines and most importantly high quality training data. So this is a case truly where the quality of the input is going to impact the quality of the output. So the limitations at the moment are generally surrounding, of course, computational complexity, and most importantly, the quality of the data and also access to the data within the organization.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting, and all of those three things really do make sense. The computation, of course, which has come a long way in recent years, and the quality of the data, absolutely critical. I agree. And then access to the data as well. I think that a lot of projects often require synthetic data. There's things you want to use AI to solve a problem or to understand, vast amounts of data or extract insights, but it has restricted access. So all good points.
Yeah, I guess I can share some examples of some successful AI implementation milestones. So if we go back to around 2015 or so, maybe 2016, when the Amazon Alexa was introduced, at that point in time, that really sparked a revolution in personal AI and AI intelligent agents. And I think that that was one of the most successful AI implementations because it was really personal. People could interact with this Amazon Alexa device, ask it about the weather, ask it about shopping opportunities for themselves, products they're interested in, things that are going on, in the news. I think that was, one of the milestones. And recently, a couple of years ago, with the release of ChatGPT for OpenAI, I think that was probably the most successful AI implementation in history in terms of customer acquisition. Time like that broke the record for the number of users that are onboarded past 1 million.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll share a few of our, successes in recent times as well, in terms of just what some of the newer technology is able to do. So, of course, these days we can't have a discussion on AI without generative AI being brought up as well. And, for what we've done here at Apexon, I'd say about half of our projects that are AI this year have been generative AI in some form. And so with the current technology, I see that generative AI has the strongest capabilities and is the most able to tackle different use cases, really, when it comes to document processing. That's going to change, and other things are going to be just as capable. But with these kind of the first year or two of really being in this generative AI revolution, the document processing is what has really taken off. And I think it's simply because it's a single, um, modal. It is text, and that can very, very easily be interpreted by the generative AI, and all of these large language models. The majority of them, and kind of what came out first is text based models, where it was trained on vast amounts of text. And of course, in it's in the label of generative AI, but it can, these models can generate new content, entirely new content based on learning from vast amounts of content. So in terms of document processing, some really interesting things that I think have helped our clients with internal efficiencies. Really, if you think about all the companies out there, and even before kind of the digital revolution, how much time did it take to, file papers and go look up information in a filing cabinet? Oh my gosh, it's crazy to think like that. But that wasn't that long ago. And then the digital revolution came along, and now, hey, we can look up these files on our computer, and I can just, maybe search for a customer's name and their insurance policy will come up, for example. I don't have to walk back to the filing cabinet. But even now, that's still not as efficient as what we're getting into with generative AI. Instead of searching a name and then flipping through, the screen of 50 different pages to find maybe a certain clause or some information on an insurance policy, as an example I'm using, now you can use generative AI and just type, hey, what is the termination date of this insurance policy and what are the terms that apply? And the generative AI itself will scan the entire document, find that exact bit of information, give it right back to you. So just one example of how things are getting even more efficient. And then when you think of some of the companies, with the breadth and scale that we work with, uh, we're talking about hours and hours and hours, and then millions and millions of dollars of time saved in terms of internal efficiencies with document processing. So for me, I think that's been a big highlight, and I'm excited to see all of the other applications as well that are coming here in the near future. So with that, Brian, I'd love to ask you kind of a question here. Brian, as being kind of a very technical expert in this field, and with your education and background, especially in computation, and solution design, et cetera, I'm curious, what are some of the complexities in AI implementation? Some of the things that people don't always think about, or, you know, I mean, even, hey, yeah, Alexa's fantastic, but that took a long time to develop. I'm sure there's a lot of complexities. A lot of the projects I'm sure that you work on, same thing. The use case is feasible, and it can be done, but there's a lot of complexities, and kind of even going back to my original statement with all the different facets that come into building, these AI applications. So would love to get your thoughts on the complexities of AI implementation.
Absolutely. There's quite a few complexities to deal with when solutioning an AI design. So the first thing at the organizational level is identifying what data you want to use to train the models. And this is not always an easy task. So data discovery is a real thing. Organizations often have data silos. This has been alleviated somewhat by the cloud, but again, you could have multiple regional instances of data being stored on multiple different cloud vendors, and you have third-party administrators who administer that data, and you're really not sure where the data is. So actually collecting the data first, and then identifying what portions of that data do you want to actually bring into the solution. That's one of the first steps. And another complexity that's not so obvious is, how do we actually measure the success of the AI solution? That's something that seems simple, but it's actually not so simple in practice. So that's something to actually argue, pretty frequently in projects. Is that okay? Before we implement an AI solution, we should also try to think about what are the success criteria and metrics that we want to use to evaluate the implementation. So then, once we have the data settled and we have the success criteria defined, now there's also the problem of identifying the talent. That's where Pexon comes in. So obviously, we're a solutions provider, and we help our customers to implement extremely complex solutions and provide resources to them that maybe they don't have. So that's one of the bigger aspects now, is the identification of the talent. Then now we get into the technical portion of, all right, well, we have so many different ways to achieve this here. Do we want to go with cloud, with a pre-built solution? Try a small subset of the data, see what that looks like. or do we want to try on premises? Do we have GPUs that are able to handle these machine learning models? Do we want to go with TensorFlow, or do we want to go with PyTorch, or do we want to write some custom code? Uh, what language do you want to choose? Do you want to choose C++ or Python? And what are the performance requirements? And once you settle all that stuff, then you've got to actually train the models and get the output and make sure that it's properly tuned and so forth. But then you actually have to put this into production. So you have to evaluate, well, how many end users are there going to be? Am I going to serve this to 10 people or 20,000 people or a million people? And you have to set up the pipelines. You have to deal with data drift in the model if you're dealing with seasonal data. Um, you know, so to make a long story short, this is not an easy process, and there's a lot of complexity that has to be managed for a successful AI implementation.
Yeah, no, that's very, very interesting. And even some of the technologies that you mentioned and some of the coding languages and determining where you're going to do the computation. Again, I think these are some of the things that, unless you're a practitioner, uh, you know, aren't really thought of when talking about these AI applications. But it's all part of the work that goes into making these things come to life. So very interesting. Another interesting topic that I think is worth discussing is kind of customizing AI solutions for different industries. So something that one of a couple of the big areas that I do work in and we do work in here at Apexon is for finance and healthcare, also retail, but understanding the industry specific regulations, for example, is critical. For instance, in finance, risk assessment is paramount. While in healthcare, patient privacy is pretty much the top priority. So some of these nuances are critical to really understand, so we can develop AI solutions that deliver maximum value and especially meet all of the regulatory standards. So I think that when it comes to you know AI solutions for different industries, uh, oftentimes some of the techniques that are used may be the same, like deep learning, for example, or extreme gradient boosting, decision trees, which tend to get very good results and don't require quite as much computation as a full decision tree. But the things that do differ from industry to industry is, one, like I mentioned, some of the privacy concerns and regulations, and then also just the business context about that industry. So even today, that's still something that AI is not able to do for us. We do need the very intelligent, business minded, uh, you know, business context to incorporate into the solution of AI, for example. And I'll just pick one, industry right now that we're doing some work in, but supply chain, for example. So, we have AI solution that is optimizing for levels of inventory and, when to purchase and if items can be used or substituted. And that's great. And AI does a great job with all of that logic. But there's a lot of business intelligence for the supply chain industry that needs to come into play. For example, um, perhaps some of the suppliers are going to be changing their prices based on some market conditions. That is not part of any AI model. AI model, only understands what it's had access to. So that's where, human intelligence needs to really augment and partner with the AI really to come up with the best solutions. So that's just one example, but also, think about back when COVID happened and everything kind of slowed down. Lead times, how long it takes to get material from your supplier to your facility, that changed significantly. And again, AI didn't really know about that. and it wasn't trained on any data that had that type of situation in the marketplace. So again, it's like you need to layer in these forward-looking human intelligence insights with the AI. So I think that's an area where um, again, some of the AI methods are the same from industry to industry, but you really need to incorporate that business context based on the industry itself, and that's where differentiating by industry for AI solutions, I think, plays a big part.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good description, Mike. And I can add a little bit to this actually. So, finance, for example, as you said, they have a regulatory environment that they have to adhere to. Well, for machine learning, in particular for deep learning and neural networks, that can cause a problem because with neural networks, you can't necessarily explain why your algorithm made the decision that it did, and
Mm-hmm.
that can get a company in trouble. So this might actually, cause a business to say, well, maybe we don't want to take on that much risk for this particular application. Let's try some decision trees so that we can actually chart out why that classification was made. So yeah, the industry and the regulations around the industry can actually drive what models you choose for those reasons.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a very good point. And yeah, in finance is definitely somewhere where we see a lot of requirements for explainability. To your point, what are your thoughts on maybe in the healthcare? I know you do a lot of work in healthcare as well, Brian. What are some of the, I don't know, some of the areas in terms of maybe what model you would pick or what data you would or wouldn't use when it comes to healthcare?
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting developments with deep learning, machine learning, AI in the healthcare space, in particular the computer vision applications, which can do things like detect lung cancer, detect skin abnormalities, or have all sorts of what you would call diagnostic capabilities, although only doctors can diagnose. But in the healthcare industry, there seems to be a need to actually identify machine learning solutions on the data side that can reduce the amount of false positives. Okay, we have this false positive and true positive, false negative, true negative. And if we're doing a thing like looking at images to detect lung cancer, we want to make sure that the algorithm is maximizing the output for true positives and manipulating the parameters that we can to reduce the false positives, and also making sure that true negatives are actually true negatives. So these sorts of things go into the decision making process about how we tune our models, how we curate them, and how we actually select the models to use in production.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense, and that's a great example. Yeah, especially with something where you're trying to detect, a disease or something related to a patient. I understand you absolutely would want to minimize, or you'd want to, maximize the true positives. That you correctly do diagnose, and I think the cost of that is partly having some additional false positives, because if you want to capture, all people that are positive, uh, you might tune your model and your algorithms that, it will inevitably end up giving you some additional positives. So you'll get some false positives, but it's critical, to your point, with things like a diagnosis, that you don't miss anyone. Last thing you want is false negatives, where you tell somebody, nope,
Right.
you don't have this condition, and they actually do. You're losing time. And so yeah, so that's very important when it comes to healthcare. So yeah, great point.
Yeah, and that also has a tie-in with anomaly detection in the finance world. With fraud detection, for example, you don't want to bother your customers too much and say, "Hey, you can't make this transaction because there's potential fraud detected. Why don't you give us a text message and clear it up?"
Hmm.
Yeah, same sort of thought process goes into the finance industry as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. That's happened to myself and a few colleagues more recently lately, where we'll get the fraud detection and we're like, what? Why are you bothering me? I'm just trying to use my card. So yeah, it's an inconvenience when it's really you, but you sure thank the finance companies when if it is fraud, that they are um um really tracking and flagging more instances than I think, anyways, from my perspective or from my experience, more than they used to, which again, I think is because of the advancements in AI. So kind of switching gears here, a few other topics for this episode. One is, I think, perhaps maybe the role of cloud services in AI. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Especially for AWS. There we work closely with AWS. We do a lot of work. We've done a lot of work with their Bedrock systems, and so, anyways, if you anything that you can kind of mention in terms of the role of cloud services in AI in the age we're in.
Absolutely. Amazon is an incredible partner um, for industry leaders and anyone who leverages cloud services. So if their customers are already on the cloud and they already have their data in the cloud, and their workflows for their classical non-machine learning workflows are being performed in the cloud, then AWS makes it very easy to transition to AI workflows and experiment with different AI capabilities. As you mentioned, SageMaker, Bedrock. If you have Amazon Bedrock, you can experiment with generative AI and different models, and start trying how those systems can impact your business, and define some use cases to explore those. If you're interested in doing machine learning workflows, you can use SageMaker, and they even have you covered with data labeling services. So going back to the data problem, if you have a whole bunch of data that you want to include in your workflows, but it's kind of messy, it's not cleaned up, well, you can actually use Mechanical Turk to have manual data labeling so that you can have some high quality training data for your machine learning workflows. So yeah, AWS is an awesome partner.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And yeah, I think most of our listeners probably, of course, heard about SageMaker and some of the other AWS products and services. Bedrock, however, I think was released just last year. Yeah, just last year, and it's kind of a game changer because especially with generative AI, Bedrock allows you to use and use various large language models that are really tailored for whatever use case you might have. So Jurassic, just as an example, it really specializes in language translation. And then they have numerous other large language models, but so they really make it easy for you to use the model that's best for your use case, and then also take out a lot of the kind of underlining engineering work that has to be done if you were to try doing something without Bedrock. So I don't think this episode will get into all the specifics about embeddings and vector databases and RAG, but essentially Bedrock really helps to accelerate your journey. Using generative AI for your use case, by taking a lot of that work out of the responsibility of the team developing it. So a lot of plug and play options there, which is great.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. And to that point, AWS does an excellent job of reducing the upfront investment required to start leveraging these technologies. So you
Right.
don't have to buy your own data center. You don't have to hire a bunch of solution architects to architect the solution. that's high performant and able to scale the training and the delivery of the models. No, no, no. They provide all of this infrastructure for you with no upfront cost. You pay for what you use and nothing more. It's really a great system.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Well, I think let's move on to our last topic here for this episode. So, any thoughts on future trends in AI? I'll share a few things about how I think businesses can prepare, but would love to get your perspective, Brian, from the amazing work that you do in kind of some emerging trends that you foresee in the AI landscape.
Yeah, I think that enterprise organizations are going to face increasing competition from startup companies um, as we move forward and as AI gets more advanced. Sam Altman said that he won't be surprised to see billion-dollar unicorn companies that are run by one, two, or even three people.
Hmm.
So I think that companies that really laser focus on how they can leverage AI to, put out some awesome products, smooth their operations, and reduce their costs will have a significant advantage over companies that don't.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a really good point. So, and then one other thing I thought I would mention is for our listeners that are wanting to insert AI into their into their workflows, into their business process. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think for just about any business, mid-size or larger, I could probably, walk in and find at least five places where like you could be doing AI here and here and here for whether it's for internal efficiencies or to optimize profitability or indirectly optimize profit, through customer experience, etc. But and especially I think with generative AI and so many companies and the public really see, being fully exposed to the value of AI. I think more and more companies are really starting to say, okay, how do we begin our journey? How do we start to take advantage of this? And so, one piece of advice that I would share through my experience is is really starting to set up kind of a center of excellence or start to build this muscle. I highly suggest that you start to put some things into place that allow you to take AI use cases and push them through, from a proof of concept to, a pilot or a trial, and then eventually into production, and then eventually, maintaining that in production and really getting the value out of it. But the reason why I bring this up is because, AI is such a different type of, such a different type of discipline, and just body of work than some traditional technologies, such as digital engineering or data engineering or database migrations, etc. um, I often say that for those types of projects, there's a start date, an end date, and you're definitely going to get the job done. It's just a matter of time and resources. And when it comes to AI, it's not quite that way. You might have you might want to do something. Hey, we're going to see if we can reduce customer churn, and we're going to use AI. Well, the AI technology works, but is your data predictive enough to really reduce customer churn by predicting it better? And then, having a business case around that. There's a lot of kind of questions before you can just say this is going to work. Same thing with, diagnosis of diseases and things like that. If the data is predictive enough and you know, there's enough historical data to really be able to, predict, then yeah, it will work. But I guess my point is, if you're just getting started on your journey, there's going to be a lot of things you try, and not everything is going to make it all the way to production. And so, having a robust process around prioritizing use cases, based on lower effort and higher value to the company. And then, is the data available? What type of models are we going to use? How are we going to evaluate the quality of the output? And then what's it look like in production? Are there any risks? Are there any regulations you have to follow? What's the end user, doing with this AI, whether it's internal or whether it's for your customers? And so, really setting up a structured way of taking use cases from ideation to production, I think is very, very important for businesses, to prepare to leverage these trends, for a competitive advantage.
Absolutely. I would add also, Mike, that I think it's very important, again, to when you embark on a journey like this, the AI journey, I think it's important sort of have some success criteria or some metrics. What do you want to see the outcome to be?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, I think that organizations going forward are going to have to sort of identify and categorize, what are the human employees really good at, and what are the AI systems really good at, and how do I put the two of these systems together? How do I have the human and the AI system working together so that they're both better? I think that is going to be a hallmark of success in the future.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Love it. Okay, well, with that, I think we're going to wrap up here. Brian, thank you so much for joining the episode. It was a great discussion. Lots of good stuff, and it's amazing, where the technology is taking us and the things that it's able to do. So always passionate about AI, and great to have a discussion with a friend and a colleague here. And then for our listeners, don't forget to join us for our next episode, which we are going to deep dive into strategic technology decisions in AI deployment. Look forward to speaking again soon, and thank you for all of those listening.